David. Adultery stories always seem to start with how perfect the marriage was, until it wasn't. And you know, I will not deviate from this template. After all, our marriage really was like that. Strong, loving, happy. We seemed like an inextricable union, two halves of one whole. We talked about everything, little things, big plans, how our day went. We held hands even when we were just watching TV on the couch. We kissed for no reason, as if our lips found each other on their own. I often told her that I loved her, and these words were not just a formality for me. I felt it with every cell of my body. She answered me in the same way. Her voice sounded warm and sincere, as if every time she said it for the first time. We hugged long, tightly, as if protecting each other from the whole world. I believed that we would have a happily ever after, that we would truly be together for the rest of our lives. Not just because it was so accepted, but because it seemed like a natural extension of our lives. Our twin daughters, Erin and Shelley, represent to us the best of what we have created together. They were like two sides of the same mirror, different, but at the same time similar. Strong in spirit, slender and full of energy, they were always distinguished by their intelligence and amazing insight. Their love of knowledge and tenacity made us incredibly proud. By the time the events I am about to describe occurred, they were already adults. Erin and Shelley were still living with us, but their world was expanding rapidly. They were actively preparing for college, filling out applications, discussing future majors and future cities. The house was filled with their laughter, their dreams and conversations about the future. We lived like a family that had everything ahead. The achievements of our children, travel together, years of quiet happiness. I couldn't even imagine that somewhere in this picture, the first cracks had already begun to appear, which I simply did not notice. My name is David London. I own a tree care company. This job has become for me not just a source of income, but also something that I truly love. We carry out a wide range of tasks related to trees. We plant young seedlings, trim branches to make them look well-groomed and safe, eliminate the consequences of hurricanes that sometimes mercilessly hit nature, cut down old, emergency trees and uproot stumps, freeing up the land for new projects. The company is doing well, which is not surprising since I live and work in New England, a region where trees are literally all around us. Here the forests are dense, powerful, and impressive, and with them are private estates, gardens, and parks that require constant maintenance. Trees always grow here, at any time of the year, and this makes our work stable. Over the years of hard work, I managed to expand my company to an impressive scale. I currently have 12 trucks, fully equipped to handle any tree care task. I have 4 teams working under me, each with 5 employees. Each of them is professional, experienced, and reliable. They are not just my employees, but also a team that I can rely on in any situation, be it routine pruning or urgent work after a powerful storm. Our work covers both routine and complex tasks. We make sure that every tree in our hands finds a second life or goes away without unnecessary harm to nature. Sometimes we work in silence, creating beauty. Sometimes we work amid the noise of saws and the screams of stormy winds, struggling with the consequences of the elements. And every time I feel proud of what we do and the path I have taken to achieve success. My wife's name is Catherine, or Kat, as her friends call her. She works as an office manager for a group of local doctors, 2 internists and 1 pediatrician. We met 20 years ago when I was trying to start my own business, taking on small and occasional orders. I didn't have a big crane back then, just a bunch of chainsaws, cables, ladders, pickup trucks, and the like. I was sawing a fallen branch in the parking lot of an office building when another branch, which I stupidly failed to notice, was under tension, rose sharply and hit me in the side of the head. I staggered for a second, trying to figure out where the bell tower was and who was ringing the damn bell before I realized what had happened. Luckily, I was wearing a helmet. I walked into an office building to look at the damage in the men's restroom mirror, but before I could find it, a beautiful petite blonde appeared in the hallway. The sight of her cleavage instantly eased my pain. She quickly and with horror examined me and then dragged me into the office where she worked. One of the doctors shined a light in my eyes, declared that I did not have a concussion, and bandaged my face. All this time, a sexy blonde, as I learned, named Catherine, stood in the treatment room, openly breaking the rules, and observed my condition. It was obvious that she had discovered me and took responsibility for my health. No serious damage was caused to me then, and 2 days later I returned with flowers. She cried and hugged me. A year later we got married. 2 years later we had twins. We were a great team. We suited each other. She is emotional, I am phlegmatic. She's quiet, I'm talkative. I need to be able to be eloquent and speak well. My entire business is built on gaining the trust of potential clients and satisfying the needs of existing ones. My days are spent talking, on the phone, on work sites, in supplier warehouses, managing employees. I have to talk all day, every day. I can talk about anything and with anyone. My children think I have a wonderful voice. Even in those rare moments when I had to raise my voice at them, they frowned because of my message, but smiled because of the sound. One of my clients once tried to convince me to become a freelance narrator for audiobooks. I told her I would think about it when I retired. At corporate picnics, I'm always asked to announce bingo numbers, name sweepstakes winners, and make introductions. We don't have square dances, but if we did, I would probably be asked to announce the steps. I've been reading books to my kids at night since they were 1, and they wouldn't let me stop reading them at night until they had boyfriends. And even then, sometimes these guys wanted to listen too. During the upcoming events, I happened to remember how one day Kat called me and said that she had nothing to say. "I just wanted to hear your voice," she whispered. By phone. Damn phone. It seems that more and more the telephone is becoming a plot point in these stories. It wasn't that long ago that the phone was hanging on the wall. It didn't record what you said or what number you literally dialed on the physical disc. It was impossible to receive messages, photos, or videos on it. How were unfaithful wives exposed before everyone had smartphones? One morning, Kat dropped her phone. It was in a protective case, but it fell at such an angle and with such speed that the screen still broke. I heard her cry of despair. You would have thought her puppy had been hit by a car. On my way to the kitchen, I glanced at our dog. She was still sleeping next to her bed. I found Kat on her knees looking at her broken phone. "Horrible," I said. She looked at me with fury. I fell silent. Of course, her phone was out of order, but that's just a thing. For some reason, this made her completely inappropriate. I noticed that lately her ability to calmly perceive troubles has disappeared somewhere. Over the previous 20 years, she would most likely have sworn for about 10 seconds and forgotten about it. Now she was holding the phone and looking at me as if I had thrown it at her. Well, I thought, these could be the first symptoms of menopause, or perhaps anxiety that we will lose both children at the same time when they move out. Whatever it is, you need to show tact. "Take my phone for today," I suggested. "I'll take yours to the Apple store, have them replace the screen, and then we'll change back." She agreed to my plan, letting out an exaggerated grunt to express her dissatisfaction with me, the universe, and fate in that order. And she did not forgive any of us for this inconvenience. Let me insert a little flashback here. This is not one of those stories where the wife suddenly begins to distance herself from her husband. Yes, I noticed that she became more irritated due to minor inconveniences and remained in a bad mood longer than usual. She looked a little less confident as I pulled her closer to me for a kiss. But once I got over it, everything was fine in bed. Again, cycle restructuring in a 40-year-old woman. I didn't know and didn't care. I just kept my distance when needed. The day before my phone crashed, I came home around 5 in the evening. She returned 10 minutes later. I met her at the back door and gave her a sharp hug. Caveman style, I kissed her and started pestering her. "Children," she wheezed. Today, I was not going to tolerate her hesitation. "Lacrosse practice," I whispered in her ear. "They may return earlier. I taught them a long time ago how birds and bees work," I growled. "And if they see their parents having sex, that's a good thing. There is nothing better than knowing that his parents love each other." We had sex. When the twins returned home, They found us standing together by the stove, hugging each other. I cooked the pasta while Kat stirred the sauce. "Oh, for the love of," Aaron said, "take the number." And they ran up the stairs, giggling. I kissed my wife. It was the last real and innocent kiss in our marriage. Let's go back to the day of the broken phone. Kat was still upset when she left for work. We kissed, but it was like kissing your elderly aunt. I went to the local Apple store and stood in line for a while. When I managed to give the phone to a nice young woman, she looked at it with calm understanding and asked for the unlock code so that she could back up the data just in case. I entered what I thought was Kat's code, but it didn't work. I then borrowed the woman's phone and called Kat at her office. I explained that they needed a code for repairs. Kat hesitated too long. I didn't think anything of it then. I was distracted by a shiny new iPad on a nearby table. When she gave me the code some time later, I repeated them to the woman, thanked Kat, told her I loved her, and hung up. After the phone was fixed, I went to a sandwich shop and ordered an Italian sandwich. I sat down at the table with Kat's phone to text her about the renovation. I looked through the list of messages looking for my name, but my eye was caught by the second-line correspondence from some Donald. It had to be Dr. Donald Wilson, one of the doctors from Kat's office. The first line of the message was visible under his name. I read it, and my body felt like it stopped functioning. "You are a very hot woman of visit." I sat staring at these words. My throat tightened. I felt the pressure rising. My stomach felt like it was filled with liquid. I couldn't move. I put my phone down and stared into space. There was white noise in my head. The world has become unreal. Somehow, I still managed to get out to my truck, forgetting about the sandwich. I sat in the car for a long time before I dared to open the correspondence. It was worse than I could have imagined. A comment was attached to the video. Apparently, it was filmed on a phone placed on a counter in one of the offices. Kat was lying on her back on a small, soft couch. She was half naked, with her blouse unbuttoned and still covering her breasts. Dr. Wilson was there, and his behavior was more than personal, causing feelings of tension and boundary violations. Their positions and actions clearly went beyond the boundaries of a professional relationship, leaving little room for doubt about what was happening. Part of my mind was in shock at what was happening, while the other seemed to be calmly recording what was happening. It was not impressive in size. An ordinary person, without any special features. She did not experience euphoria and did not cry out with pleasure. She was not coerced, and no force was used against her. This was her conscious choice. The part of the brain that took notes looked at the date. Then she scrolled back through the correspondence. More videos, photos, even audio files. All this had been going on for 3 months, roughly from the time she started staying late at work a couple of times a week, ostensibly preparing for an audit. I didn't watch the whole video, just enough to see that my wife and Donald were all over them. The sex was terrible in itself, but somehow the lies hurt more. I drove home, ignoring the calls. My name flashed on the display. Kat was calling her phone. I also ignored incoming message notifications. When I got home, I went into the living room and started fiddling with the big screen TV. Then he began to wait. Our daughters arrived first. They waved to me and went to their rooms. Several hours passed, and finally Kat burst into the house. "Where the hell have you been?" She screamed furiously. I called and called. "I know the phone is ready. Where is he?" I shrugged. She turned purple, and it seemed to me that for the first time in our marriage, she might attack me. I no longer recognized this woman. Everything I thought I knew about her was now in question. I turned towards the stairs and shouted, "Girls, family meeting." Kat continued screaming at me. "What the hell is going on?" I just looked at her silently. This seemed to anger her even more. "Talk to me," she squealed shrilly. I had never heard her scream like that, not even when a black cabinet fell on her in the basement one day. It was a whole other level of madness and panic. The daughters ran into the room, alarmed, stopped dead in their tracks, and began looking first at me, then at her. I turned to them. "Your mother is sleeping with another man. She broke our wedding vows. We will get a divorce as soon as possible. I pointed the remote at the TV and turned it on, then took my phone out of my back pocket. Kat looked startled when she saw the phone. She took a step towards me as if she was going to snatch it, but then seemed to wilt. I warned them that since they were adults, they could see everything with their own eyes and pressed the button, and the video from the phone began to play on a huge screen. The daughters saw everything with their own eyes, in high definition, almost life-size, with realistic sound. "Turn it off," Kat sobbed. "Turn it off." I paused the video instead. The screen froze on a frame where they were in motion. I looked at my daughters. Their mouths were open. Erin looked at the screen. Shelley to her mother. "It's not like you," began Kat. Erin interrupted her mother. "What? Isn't it what we think? What the hell, Mom? What else could it be? You're having sex with one of the doctors." Shelley finally found her voice. "Of all the vile things you could do, this is simply the worst." "Fabulous, simply wonderful," Erin raged. "How could you do this to us?" Tears streamed down Kat's face. "Darling, I didn't mean." "Don't call us dear," Shelley shouted. "You wanted to do this. Look at you. You clearly wanted to become a woman of easy virtue." Kat recoiled as if she had been struck by the word. "Girls," I started, but stopped when they both clung to me and hugged me tightly. "We're so sorry, Dad." They were both crying. I hugged them both and looked at Kat. She saw the rest of the family in front of her, united in a protective group. She was excluded from it and felt it. Shelley released me and picked up her phone, scrolling through her messages. 3 months, she showed the screen to her sister. "It was a mistake," began Kat. "Nonsense, Mother," Erin interrupted her. "A mistake is forgetting the keys. Having sex on the side for 3 months is a lot of bad decisions. Having sex without protection is a very bad decision. The decisions you've made over and over again. How many times?" Kat looked confused. "How many times have you slept with this freak?" Shelley asked. "Why ask?" Erin answered. "She'll lie anyway." This seemed to hurt Kat more than the video evidence of her infidelity. "She's a cheater. Our mom is a cheater." "I can't believe it," Shelley said as she continued to scroll through the messages. "What an idiot this guy is. Mom, you have terrible taste in men." She threw an apologetic glance at me. "You were lucky once." "David," Kat said quietly, "why don't you say anything?" Erin turned to her. "Of course, here is the text rewritten, avoiding sex scenes and vulgarity, but keeping the basic facts." "And what do you think he should say, Mom? Do you even know our father? You just broke his heart." "I wouldn't blame him if he never spoke to you again," Shelley said. "I know I'm seriously considering this myself." Erin nodded in agreement. "When are you leaving?" Erin asked. "I live here." Kat seemed to pull herself together. "I live here and I'm not leaving. And we are not going to get divorced. Your father and I will figure this out." Shelley flushed. "Will you figure it out?" She pointed to the TV, which was still showing the video that caused the scandal. "There is no way to solve this problem. Do you know my father? Only once in all the years that you were together did you perhaps realize that he had pride. What's with this video? Without any protection, you could bring someone else's problem into our home. Have you thought about this?" This thought suddenly made me feel sick. "I'm taking precautions." Kat began, but then stopped, realizing that nothing good would come of the explanation. "You brought someone else into our house. You made Daddy face it. Do you even realize how low and insulting this is?" Shelley said sharply. Erin added, "Dad is a man who forgives a lot. He does not hold a grudge, even when he is offended. Maybe you thought he could forgive everything. But this is something else. This is complete disrespect. This is unforgivable." Kat looked at me with pleading in her eyes. I just looked at her without saying anything. "Please, David," she said. "Don't look at Dad," Shelley shouted at Kat, "because we won't let him forgive you. He's proud, but he's only human. You might be able to find your way back into his heart if he was naive enough to allow it. But we won't let this happen." Erin nodded decisively. "Go away, Mom." Pack your things and go to Grandma. She has a spare bedroom. I can't look at you anymore." Shelley laughed. "This is not funny." Kat was indignant. "It's actually funny," Shelley said. "I just realized that if this video gets online, everything will become known pretty soon." "You should have thought about this beforehand, Mom." Kat gasped in fear. "For God's sake, get out," Aaron suddenly screamed. "David," Kat cried again, "talk to me. Will you let your children run your life? What about us?" "What about us?" I thought. "We are no more. Never will." But I didn't say anything. I didn't mean to, and I shouldn't have. My wonderful daughters, whom I tried to raise with a sense of morality, compassion, and empathy, stood guard over my heart like a pair of Valkyries. I sat down on the sofa, approximately where the last sex of my marriage with Kat took place yesterday. My girls sat on either side of me, hugging me. Eventually, Kat got tired of looking at us, packed her bag, and left. The divorce, as our lawyer put it in his characteristic dry but confident manner, turned out to be easy. His voice sounded calm, even a little cynical, as if he had seen hundreds of similar cases and knew them in advance to the smallest detail. He attended to the needs of the corporation with such professional care that I could not help but be amazed at how thoughtful his every action was. The corporation, it turned out, was the key to this process. We registered the business as a legal entity several years ago, and this solution, proposed by our lawyer, now worked to our advantage. He then confidently stated that such a structure would protect us from any false claims that might arise from, say, injuries on the premises. This was especially important in our business because working with trees is not only difficult, but also dangerous. He provided for everything, even those situations that I could not even think about. Now, discussing Kat's betrayal and its consequences, he reminded me why this defense was so important. He once again put everything into perspective, patiently explaining the legal subtleties that seemed unnecessary to me at the time. Kat and I were the main persons of the corporation, and our salary came from net profit, which we divided equally 50-50. But the lawyer's real genius was in the way he drafted the corporation's charter. It provided for everything: death, illness, divorce. Then, several years ago, these points seemed something distant and unlikely, more of a formality than a necessity. But now, in the context of our breakup, they have become a lifeline. He explained that if key people in a corporation get divorced, it has no impact on the business. Neither of us could force the other to sell a share or try to force a partner out of business. Everything remained as it was. We both continued to receive our 50% of the profits, no matter what personal grievances and disagreements tore us apart in life. A corporation, he said, is essentially a separate entity. She is not interested in your personal affairs. This dry, almost emotionless approach was striking in its logic. Even the pension plans that were set up for both of us remained in effect. Nobody lost anything. I sat at the table, listening to his voice and looking at the papers. Everything was laid out so clearly that it was partly reassuring. In a world that suddenly seemed full of chaos and betrayal, there was at least one island of stability. The corporation, that faceless legal structure, protected us both even now, when everything else seemed to be falling apart. The divorce, as our lawyer put it in his characteristic dry but confident manner, turned out to be easy. His voice sounded calm, even a little cynical, as if he had seen hundreds of similar cases and knew them in advance to the smallest detail. He attended to the needs of the corporation with such professional care that I could not help but be amazed at how thoughtful his every action was. The corporation, it turned out, was the key to this process. We registered the business as a legal entity several years ago, and this solution, proposed by our lawyer, now worked to our advantage. He then confidently stated that such a structure would protect us from any false claims that might arise from, say, injuries on the premises. This was especially important in our business because working with trees is not only difficult, but also dangerous. He provided for everything, even those situations that I could not even think about. Now, discussing Kat's betrayal and its consequences, he reminded me why this defense was so important. He once again put everything into perspective, patiently explaining the legal subtleties that seemed unnecessary to me at the time. Kat and I were the main persons of the corporation, and our salary came from net profit, which we divided equally 50-50. But the lawyer's real genius was in the way he drafted the corporation's charter. It provided for everything: death, illness, divorce. Then, several years ago, these points seemed something distant and unlikely, more of a formality than a necessity. But now, in the context of our breakup, they have become a lifeline. He explained that if key people in a corporation get divorced, it has no impact on the business. Neither of us could force the other to sell a share or try to force a partner out of business. Everything remained as it was. We both continued to receive our 50% of the profits, no matter what personal grievances and disagreements tore us apart in life. A corporation, he said, is essentially a separate entity. She is not interested in your personal affairs. This dry, almost emotionless approach was striking in its logic. Even the pension plans that were set up for both of us remained in effect. Nobody lost anything. I sat at the table, listening to his voice and looking at the papers. Everything was laid out so clearly that it was partly reassuring. In a world that suddenly seemed full of chaos and betrayal, there was at least one island of stability. The corporation, that faceless legal structure, protected us both even now when everything else seemed to be falling apart. 2 weeks after the broken phone day, the girls and I were eating pizza at that same counter when Kat rang the doorbell. She had to call because I changed all the locks. I didn't think anything would get hurt or stolen by Kat, but since her idiot lover could access her keys the same way he could have sex with her, I couldn't let the kids stay in an unsafe house. Erin opened it to her, but didn't respond to Kat's attempt to hug her. Erin turned on her heel and went back to her slice of pizza. "Oh, hello, Mom," Shelley said with the greatest indifference. "It's so nice to see you." Shelley didn't even get up. I could tell that being called Mom rather than Mommy irritated my soon-to-be ex-wife. Kat looked at me, then at her two daughters. She seemed to be in physical pain. I didn't say anything. Finally, she pulled out a chair and sat down opposite me. The four of us were again at the small kitchen table, just like in the good old days. Erin broke the silence. "It's not that I'm really interested, Mom, but why did you get involved with this person?" "Please watch your language, young lady." Kat tried to reason with her. Shelley snorted. "Language. Our dear mother is behaving inappropriately, and we need to follow the rules of speech. Tell us, Mom, do you have many such adventures?" Erin added with feigned surprise. "Are you saying this has happened to other people?" "David," Kat looked at me. I looked at the kids, and they sighed and shrugged, as if they were back at 12 years old. "I don't. It's over. This won't happen again," Kat said. Erin laughed. "Well, finally. Do you think you can forget everything so easily? Fix everything back as if nothing happened?" "It's too late." Shelley stood up, took the envelope, and threw it in front of Kat. "Sign this, Mom. In 90 days, everything will be completed." Kat stared at the envelope. "I don't want." Erin slammed her fist onto the table, causing everyone to flinch. "And I didn't want my mother to betray my father." She looked at Kat with absolute hatred and calmly continued. "But she did it. End of story. The end of the family." "By the way, Mother, the house remains yours," Shelley said. "But we will live with Dad. You can rent out our rooms if you want." Kat looked at me, pleading with her eyes. "David, say something. Why can't we talk about this?" Shelley waved her hand in the air. "No, no, no. You will not talk to my father. He has nothing to tell you. You've already let everything speak for itself. Now you can start walking." She and Erin looked at each other as if they wanted to high-five each other for the rhyme. "Don't you dare talk about your mother like that," Kat screamed. Shelley slowly wiped her lips with a napkin and carefully placed it on the table. "Mother, our father doesn't talk to you, as you may have noticed. I think one of the reasons for this is that he is afraid. If he starts talking, he will first scream, then scream, then scream, and then he might want to strangle you. Honestly, that's exactly what I want." "Have you even thought about what you did to us?" Shelley asked. And I'm not talking about shame because our mother is a woman of easy virtue. Now Aaron and I are forced to live with the idea that your willingness to break sacred vows and let another man in may have been passed on to us genetically. Kat leaned back, realizing where this was going. Aaron continued, now Shelley and I have psychological trauma. If I fall in love with some wonderful man, probably someone who will remind us of Dad, Shelley interjected. Yes, Aaron nodded, and we will love this wonderful man with all our hearts. But when he proposes to me, I'll have to worry that one day, years from now, this genetic flaw will show up, and I'll run to the nearest bush to sleep with some random loser. Like you did, Shelley said, and I will destroy my marriage, break the heart of the person I loved more than anyone in the world. This is what you did to us, Mother. Thank you so fucking much, Aaron finished. Kat shook her head. It is not transmitted genetically. How do we know? Aaron said. You still haven't told us why you did it. Kat wrapped her arms around herself as if she suddenly felt cold. I really don't know. I felt old and ugly. You were about to leave. Done. No, Shelley exploded. Don't you dare say his name in this house. Aaron nodded. At least until you get a house after the divorce and live here with him. Does he have children? Which one of them will take my room? Stop it, Kat said sternly. I told you it's over. It's just, he kept telling me how beautiful I was. Damn it, Mom, Shelley said sadly. Dad always told you how beautiful you are and how much he loves you. More precisely, he loved me, I think. She looked at me. I shrugged. He was always touching you. Kissed. What the hell else did you need? He has to say this, Kat said pleadingly. He is my husband. He must say this. Both girls stared at her with wild disbelief. You threw your marriage into the trash because some scumbag pulled dust in your eyes, Aaron said slowly. Mom, Shelley said, you're an even bigger idiot than we first thought. Didn't it occur to you that you were just being played with? He complimented you to get you into bed. And Dad gives compliments because he means them. Kat covered her face with her hands. I know. She looked up at me. I'm sorry, David. This will never happen again. Damn sure it won't happen again, Aaron said. Because in 3 months you will be lonely, and then you can have sex with anyone who tells you how great your damn hair looks today. Hi, Grandma, Aaron said. Wait, I'll turn on the speakerphone. Hi, Grandma, Shelley said. How is she doing? Hello, girls. Your mother is having a hard time. She's just sitting in her room. Sometimes she comes down and watches a movie with me, but she looks like the light has gone out inside her. My wonderful baby has turned into a zombie. I know it's her own fault, but what can I do for her? Nothing you can do, Shelley said. Does she keep in touch with her lover? She says no, except for work, purely for business, and I believe her. She's too depressed, and she knows that I watched every minute of those videos. The day she begged me to come home, I told her that if she touched him again or lied to me, she would end up on the street. She drags herself to work and has to see him every day. This can't be good for her. No, Aaron agreed. It can't. Dr. Wilson knocked on the door of the examination room and heard a cheerful, "Come in." Inside, a tall young woman sat on a table. Dr. Wilson extended his hand. I'm Dr. Wilson. I'm sure so, the woman said, shaking his hand firmly. Dr. Wilson blinked, then looked at the folder in his hands. Miss, you did not fill out the column with your last name. The woman shrugged. Names, I have more problems than that. He closed the folder and looked at it. She was clearly healthy. She probably came here because her boyfriend got her pregnant. How can I help? Well, she said. First of all, do you think I have beautiful breasts? He was confused. What? Do I have beautiful breasts? Listen, miss, whatever your name is, I'll call the nurse now. I think you should leave. Immediately. The woman took her phone out of her pocket and pressed the screen. She lifted him up so he could see 2 people having sex. He heard his own voice. He grabbed the phone and pressed the screen several times, trying to stop the video. Finally, he found the pause button. What the hell is this? he shouted. Catherine, said the woman. Nobody calls her Catherine. He shook the phone in front of her face. Where did you get this? From Catherine, of course. Don't bother calling her. Today is her day off. That's why I'm here. Who are you? Her daughter. You would know this if you spent more time taking an interest in your employees rather than seducing them. He turned pale. You must leave. Otherwise, I'll call the police. Yes, sure. If you think my mother's breasts are beautiful, then get ready to see younger breasts. She reached for the buttons of her blouse. He threw up his hands. No. She froze. Oh, I see. Your wife wouldn't approve. Or your 4 children. Let's see. She took a piece of paper from her pocket and unfolded it. This is Maureen Wilson, née Stafford, and your wonderful children Mikey, Joey, Rosie, and Saul. She lowered the paper. Seriously, Saul? She looked at the paper again. Email Wilson 56. What do you want from me? He growled. The letter is ready to be sent, she said, pointing to the phone. Simply say, Siri, send an email from your outbox. Oh, I think she already sent it. Dr. Wilson dropped the phone as if it were hot coal. Then he swore and began to stomp on him. The girl giggled. Nice try, Doc. It was an old iPhone that cost $10. By the way, I was bluffing. But the letter is still on my good phone, ready to send. No need, he suddenly spoke calmly. Tell me, Doc, how many? He was confused. What? How many women working here have you seduced? How many times have you waited to shower them with compliments and make them take off their panties? He didn't answer. I thought so, she said, stretching and raising her arms high above her head. Dr. Wilson's eyes followed them up and up. Do you keep scalpels here? She nodded towards the cabinets. Yes. Why? You think they're sharp enough to cut off a man's dignity? Something in her gaze made him turn towards the door. You have until Friday to get out of town, she shouted after him. Otherwise, Maureen will get high-resolution copies, and also your mother and father, the local newspaper, and the state medical board. He was already running down the corridor. This is bad. Aaron and Shelley were hiding in the shadows against the back wall of the large equipment shed. They watched their father standing alone in front, holding a chainsaw. He just held her. Didn't pull the cord, didn't check the chain tension. He just stood there, lowering the saw in one hand. This is bad. What did you expect? His harlot mother broke his heart. He loved her so much. I know, and I know that she had to leave, but I still hate her. Does he hate her? I think yes. Just imagine what was going through his head when he first saw this video. Years of love, everything is calm, and then suddenly your heart hits the wall. Without warning. No time to prepare. Something must have broken inside him. Yes, just look at him. I'm worried. Sister, do we understand how men work? Apparently not. Not really. What are you thinking about? Girls, their grandmother began, your mother is not getting better. I know you want her to suffer, but do you want me to suffer too? It pains me to see her fall so low and lose hope. I never thought about it that way, Aaron said. We just focused on hurting her like she hurt Daddy. Any suggestions, Grandma? Shelley asked. Do you think there's a chance he'll stop the divorce? No way. Our dad is stubborn, and in this case, he has every right to be so. She lied and cheated. Their marriage is completely destroyed. Grandma sighed heavily. I think you're right. Could you convince David to just talk to her? She says he hasn't said a word to her since that day. I doubt. His pride suffered greatly then. He just cut it off completely. I don't know if he'll ever talk to her again. Girls, the grandmother spoke more quietly. She calls him several times a day. If he answers, she immediately hangs up. If he gets an answering machine, he stays on the line just to hear his voice in the recording of the greeting. She cries as she listens. He thinks I can't hear it, but she never leaves a message. The girls looked at each other. It was both a sweet victory and a terrible, bitter defeat. So boys, Aaron said, Your finest hour. We have questions that only a man can answer. The answer is, will I have sex with you? Aaron sighed heavily. No, Tommy, not like that. Aren't you doing great in your studies? My name is written there in fucking indelible ink, Tommy replied. It turns out you can be smart and have sex. This still needs to be proven. The other guy chuckled and Shelley slapped his arm. Focus, Noah. This is serious. So serious that there won't be any girls for you in the foreseeable future. Tommy laughed, but then fell silent when he saw Aaron frown at him and nod. He swallowed nervously. Okay, what questions? They were in Noah's basement, in a room with a media center and a gaming area, and part-time in a place for snuggling. But there was not the slightest hint from the sisters that there was even the slightest chance of this today. They told their boys the whole story. So our question is, as a man, could you ever forgive a woman who cheated on you like that? Actually, Noah began. I know something about this. Wow, Tommy interrupted. Did Shelley cuckold you? Shelley walked up to Tommy, smiling seductively. Then she hit. Listen carefully. Tommy gasped and collapsed on the sofa. Okay, I got it. Noah sighed. Jerk. A few years ago, my mom slept with a salesman from her real estate agency. One of the secretaries told my father about it. But your parents are still together, Aaron pointed out. Yes, but it was on the edge. They balanced for a long time. I heard it all unfold. Were they that loud? Hell no, Noah replied. They tried not to make any noise so that my younger brothers and I wouldn't know anything. So I bugged the whole house. Thank you, Amazon. Wow, said Tommy admiringly. They couldn't even fart without me recording it. I heard everything. At first, my father was all for divorce. No forgiveness. He was badly injured. Like your father. When your wife sleeps with someone else, it's humiliating. Our male lizard brain demands a response. That's why you always read in the news about cases where a man catches his wife or girlfriend in bed with another, and it ends in death. Tommy carefully rubbed the impact area. Knowing your father, I suspect his first thought was to put them both through a shredder. Aaron nodded. Instead, he just went silent. His rage was conveyed through his silence. It's creepy, but no less powerful than screams, Noah noted. Especially for your father, who usually only says kind words. Your mother must be going crazy because he's ignoring her. I don't care about her. Go on, Shelley said. My father came up with a plan before I even started eavesdropping. This put my mom on a short leash if she wanted to have a chance to stay. She agreed. They started going to counseling. I couldn't listen to it, but I could hear them discussing their sessions. What I learned, cheating is a unique affront to marriage. If your wife or husband drinks, or gambles, or behaves cruelly, it can still be overcome together. But as soon as another appears, everything becomes different. This is where very deep and strong emotions come into play. Yes, said Tommy, your father may forgive your mother, but he will never look at her sexually again without thinking about the fact that there was someone else with her. It will be an eternal triple date with one indestructible ghost. That's fucking poetic, Tommy, Aaron said. Tommy beamed. I know, right? But this is essentially an end to the relationship. That's true, Noah agreed. One day I heard my father crying while talking to my mother. He said that all he could think about was the other man who was with her. How he can't bring himself to kiss her. You know, knowing that someone else did it. That he could probably forgive everything else. But he will never forget this. He will always think of her as dirty. Defamed, it seems, that's what he said. Aaron frowned. Crap. How to overcome this? But your mother probably had sexual experience when they got married, Shelley said. Why doesn't he think about all her past boyfriends? Why just this dude? That's why you guys need us, Tommy said. Look, I don't care about the dozens of guys Aaron had something with before me. He paused to dodge the pillow. When you start dating a new girl, she resets. The odometer is reset to 0. The lizard brain erases all the shadows of former friends. Noah nodded. I suspect women feel it a little differently. This is evolution. The woman knows that the child inside her is hers. The man is not sure. Another thing my dad said was that if he let my mom into his bed again, he would always worry that the new trick she was showing him was something she learned from another man. And every time she closed her eyes, he would think that she represented the other one. Wow, Aaron said. This is luggage. How did they deal with this? Red alert, said Grandma. Shelley put her phone on speaker. What's happened? Your mother has a date. She said the divorce is final and now understands that she has lost David forever. One of the girls in the office set her up on a blind date on Friday. He will come for her at 7 p.m. Is there enough information? Of course, Grandma, Aaron said. Thank you. We'll take care of it. Look at this, Shelley said, looking through a rhododendron bush in her grandmother's yard. A thin man with sandy hair and glasses was approaching the house. He looked to be about 30. He's still quite young. Yes, but he brought flowers. This can be counted. Flowers to win favor, Shelley replied sarcastically. They went out to meet the man before he even reached the steps of the house. He stopped and looked at them, puzzled. Are you going somewhere? Aaron asked sharply. The man looked nervously at the house number, then frowned. I have a date. Correction. It was appointed. Better luck next time. What? Why? We are your inspectors. Well, that sounded weird, Aaron muttered. What she means is that we examined you and found you unsuitable, Shelley added. Who are you? Who authorized you to decide? We are the children of the woman you had a date with. By the way, how old are you? It's none of your business. Wrong answer. But in any case, there is no right answer. Now, get lost. Yeah, until we called the police, Aaron added. Police? I just came on a date. It's canceled, so now you're trespassing, Shelley said coldly. The man took out his phone. Listen, at least let me explain. Help! Stranger! Danger! Shelley suddenly shouted. The man was confused and hurried back to his car. Their mother, who had come out just in time to witness this, ran out of the house and tried to chase after the fleeing man, but Aaron and Shelley grabbed her by the arms and brought her back to the steps. What are you doing? Kat looked at her daughters in despair. It was Lenny, my date. No mother of ours would date a guy named Lenny, Aaron said. Or didn't you know that? What are you even thinking about, Mom? Shelley added. I was trying to go on a date. Kat pulled her hands away from their grip. I'm a single woman and I can date no matter what the person's name is. Without thinking, Aaron grabbed her mother's shoulder and pushed her back. Only at that moment did Kat realize how physically stronger her daughters had become. How many men have you met in recent years? Aaron asked, looking straight into her mother's face. When did you two become so cruel? Kat asked bitterly. Aaron smiled. About the time you started making questionable decisions, Mom. We just can't watch you make mistakes like that. Kat lowered her head and added quietly, Yes, I understand that. Dad drove hundreds of miles just to sit in the waiting room at another clinic and get tested. He was too ashamed to go to his regular doctor and admit that his wife had treated him this way. He was trying to protect your reputation. Just imagine this. Shelley put her hand under her mother's chin and lifted her face. Do we need to take a DNA test? Do we need to find out if we are really his children? Kat staggered as if she had been hit. How can you say that? Look at you two, you are the spitting image of him. How could such a thing even occur to you? Because you betrayed him, Mom. This is no longer in doubt. So now answer the question, how many people have been in your life? Kat glanced uneasily at the street. Here? Yes. Well, the first one was a guy in college. Then there were 2 novels before I met your father. Then your father, that's 4. Shelley laughed. And Donald, the one with whom all this became known, doesn't count? Kat blushed and opened her mouth, but could not say anything. Aaron turned to her sister. Mom will say it was a mistake, that he didn't mean anything to her. But that just makes it worse, Mom, Shelley said sadly. You destroyed a happy home and destroyed two families for the sake of a person who was not dear to you. If he were your soulmate, or if you were madly in love, we would at least try to understand it. Two families? Kat asked. Aaron nodded. It turned out that Mrs. Dr. Wilson knew nothing about her husband leading a double life. Some vigilant person sent her all the materials. Shelley giggled. Yes, everything has been revealed. Did you know that he cheated not only with you, but also with other colleagues? Shocked, Kat's look told them she didn't know. The consequences are severe, Mom. At least we learned a valuable lesson from all of this, Aaron said. Kate, dejected, turned to return to the house. Where are you going? Shelley demanded. Answer us honestly, Mom. If this Lenny was the right person and said nice things to you, would you move on? Kat looked at Aaron. Because if you have any intentions of doing this again, Aaron continued, we won't allow it. Mom, Shelley said sternly, we are still angry at you for what you did to our father, who never deserved to be treated like that. But, and this is a very important but. Aaron couldn't help but snort, and Shelley gave her a stern look to shut her up. Shelley continued, we have a lot to talk about with you. But before we do, we want you to know that if you ever look or touch another man who is not our father, we will consider you a stranger, Aaron intervened. You will not be invited to our weddings, nor will you be a part of our lives. You will never see your grandchildren. Is this clear? Kat stared at them, at a loss for words. Her mouth was relaxed. She began to hyperventilate. The four conspirators gathered at their headquarters in the basement of Noah's house, freed from his brothers and sisters with the help of bribes and threats. So here's the thing, Aaron began. Mom now owns the house, but she doesn't want to go back there. Now she is with her grandmother. Wait a minute, Tommy said. It looks like you want to help her now. What about hatred? Oh, we still hate her, Shelley said. But we are really worried about Dad. He is not himself. Maybe he needs to have sex, Noah suggested. Maybe I should. Tommy stopped talking when he saw Aaron's face. Doesn't matter. The problem is that right now he's not in a good position to judge who to get involved with, Aaron said. We don't want him to start a relationship with some gold digger. The same goes for our Saint Mother, Shelley added. The bitter truth is that we don't want to get some worthless stepfather or stepmother. So, Noah said, are you saying? A woman of easy virtue you know is better than. Exactly, Shelley agreed. We have this summer to bring our idiot parents together again. But Mom is with Grandma and Dad rented an apartment. Tommy raised his index finger. I have, he began carefully, a cunning plan that cannot fail. Dr. Sarah Ravani has stopped writing. What did you say? I said, repeated the first patient. Were you aware of sexual misconduct in your office? I don't understand what you're talking about. The second patient was clearly not convinced. This unnerved Dr. Ravani, since the patients were identical twins. She usually delivered the twins separately, but these two insisted on hosting them together. And although they were adults, they were still technically classified as pediatric patients, although these particular patients towered over her and probably each weighed twice as much as she did. Are you really going to claim, said the second patient, that you knew nothing about your colleague Dr. Donald Wilson's numerous affairs over the past few years? Dr. Ravani looked at the sheet in front of her again and noticed the last name. Your mother. Right, one of his victims. Dr. Ravani waved her hand. I was told she was a willing participant. So you knew. Only rumors. I don't have time for gossip. Do you have time to defend yourself in court? Or time to talk to the journalists who will be on duty in front of the clinic in their vans with satellite dishes when the news becomes known? Another patient, doctor. Raven's eyes were starting to hurt from trying to tell the twins apart, added. You know, one of the questions they'll ask is, did you sleep with Dr. Wilson? This is slander, Dr. Ravani flushed. Maybe, but you seem to be the only one in this office that bastard couldn't seduce. Are you married? Dr. Ravani sighed. What do you want from me? Did you even come here for the reception? Of course, we have severe pneumonia. What is this? It's none of your business. We already have a diagnosis and treatment plan. Just sign a couple of papers and we'll be gone. Dr. Ravani accepted the papers, glanced at them briefly, signed them, and returned them. The patients rose to leave. One more thing, Doc. If we ever find out that you knew that bastard seduced our mother and didn't try to warn our dad, you're screwed. I don't even know what that means, Dr. Ravani countered. Oh my God, Grandma. Is this a new iPhone? Yes, it's him. Now take your hands off him and be quiet. Hello, David? I'm afraid I have bad news. No, it's about girls. They started having anxiety attacks. Very strong. No, they didn't want to burden you. I took them to the pediatrician and he diagnosed. No, they are not here now. I made them herbal tea and put them to bed. The poor things were shaking from stress. The poor things were indeed trembling, but from suppressed laughter. They hugged each other, shaking with laughter. The doctor was very concerned that this might affect their ability to attend college, David. I'm very worried. Yes, visit them first thing in the morning. Treatment. The doctor, having learned about the current situation, recommended returning them to their previous environment as soon as possible. Yes, to the house where they grew up, with both parents. What? Don't yell at me, David. Think about the girls. I'm sure you can tolerate her at least until the end of the summer. Yes, I'll call her. Grandma hung up and handed the phone to Aaron. Now you can look. Hurry up. I need to go home and sell the same nonsense to your mother. Grandma, really? Nonsense? Grandmother clasped her chest with her hands. Who was photographed naked at Woodstock? You. Cat. This bastard didn't even know how to have sex properly. He could only promise that he could. Well, he also knew how to study women and find their buttons to push them. How can you go through medical school and not learn how to please a woman? Maybe the whole point is that they only work with corpses. God knows, he treated me like a piece of dead meat. Why the hell did I sleep with him? I allowed him because I was going through a period of doubt. I began to doubt my appearance, my sexual attractiveness, and that bastard felt it. As he passed me in the office, he whispered so that only I could hear. How beautiful I look today. What a sexy dress I have. When we were alone in the lounge, he would lean over, smell my hair, and say I smelled like flowers. I started waiting for his stupid and obvious compliments. I was delighted, like a schoolgirl, that they paid attention to me. My body responded to this constant rush of delight. It made no sense. He was unremarkable, only buttons. The first time I stayed late at work to sort out insurance paperwork. I was alone when Donald came back and sat down next to me. He pulled up his chair and started saying that I was the most beautiful woman he had ever worked with. He was happy to work with such a capable person. Kind, warm, caring, smart. Somewhere in this stream of compliments our faces came close, and he kissed me. He led me to the examination room. It was so forbidden. It wasn't all about him at all. Everything was in me. I didn't care that he put the phone on the table and set up the camera so that it was filming us. 2 days later, he again asked me to stay. I knew what would happen, but I couldn't stop. He was a terrible lover. My husband is an amazing lover, generous and attentive. My husband is gentle when I need to be loved and rough when I need it. He knows my body after all our years together, after all the nights. Damn, what an idiot I am. I should have finished it, but something stupid and broken inside me was getting validation in its own worth by seeing another man's reaction because of my nakedness. I honestly don't know what I was thinking when David found out. I knew he would find out eventually. Donald sent me a video. What a self-righteous idiot he is. He thought I'd keep them forever or something. And like an idiot, I didn't delete them. I guess I wanted to be exposed. I guess I was hoping that David finding out would push me back into a normal life, give me a reason to stop lying and lay on my back for Donald. I thought David would yell at me, be angry for a day or two, and then we could go back to our old lives. After 20 years of loyalty, Don't I deserve a second chance? I didn't expect that he would literally never speak to me again. It's been months since I dropped that damn phone, and he hasn't said a word to me since. I long to hear his voice. Throughout the years of our marriage, these deep intonations comforted me, made me feel safe and loved. I feel incomplete. It was as if something important had been cut off from me. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I didn't even think about how this would affect my children. Seeing the hatred in their eyes that day and hearing the terrible tone in which they spoke to me was devastating. The way they instantly rallied around their father made me feel a twisted sense of pride for them. It also hit me in the face with the realization that I had broken my family in half. Grandma tapped her teacup on the table to get her attention. Everyone was gathered in the formal dining room, with Grandma sitting at the head of the table, David on the right, Kat on the left, and the twins at the other end, sitting next to each other, hugging each other. She handed each a set of bound pages. Here are the house rules for the summer. Catherine will live in the master bedroom. David, you'll be in the guest room. There is a schedule for who will cook when. I hired a cleaner who will come once a week to reduce the load. Oh yeah, and I order food delivery twice a week for the same reason. Is everything clear? Nods from all sides. The grandmother glanced briefly at her daughter, who was trying, but failing, not to look at David. He, on the other hand, hadn't looked at his ex-wife once since she walked in. This, she tapped her copy, is all about getting Aaron and Shelley back on solid ground. Do you all agree, David? Yes, Lucille, he replied. Catherine. Her daughter nodded slowly, not taking her eyes off her ex-husband. Girls? The twins looked terrible. Distracted by their own problems, the mother and father could not help but notice how much their daughters seemed to be deteriorating. They were pale, the eyes were red, sunken, with dark circles under them. They sat at the table, hugging each other, shaking from time to time with suppressed sobs. Grandma knew that the twins were actually masking their giggles as grief. She hoped they wouldn't start giggling right now that would ruin the whole plan. Of course, they looked terrible. They spent a couple of hours watching YouTube videos about Halloween makeup and experimenting until they looked half dead. Your job this summer, Grandma told David and Kat, is to recreate as much of a happy home as possible as it was before. Well before. One more rule. No visitors of the opposite sex in the house. Erin coughed as if she was about to spit out a glass of phlegm. Except for Tommy and Noah. If any questions or conflicts arise, do you all agree to contact me and accept my decision as final? David nodded. Kat nodded. David. A couple of weeks after I moved back into what was now officially Kat's, I was sitting on my lunch break at a construction site in a neighborhood about a mile from home. I was sitting in the first truck I bought for my then new business, an old GMC with a lift basket for climbing trees and a box bed for hauling wood chips. In my equipment numbering system, this old lady was Truck 1. The cabin was dusty, filled with spare engine parts and hydraulic hoses, but it felt like home. Since I now had no home, this was quite acceptable. The passenger door opened. I thought it was someone from the crew, so I was surprised to see Lucille climb into the cabin. She is a small woman, like her daughter, full and miniature. Her hair is still mostly blonde with occasional streaks of gray that she makes no effort to hide, and as she swung her leg up to climb into the seat next to me, I caught a glimpse of her thigh, pale and smooth. I remembered Benjamin Franklin's words about how women's lower bodies remain plump until the very end. I always thought Lucille was a beautiful woman at any age, and I looked forward to growing old next to my version of her. And now, everything has gone to hell. She made herself comfortable and handed me a brown paper bag. Everything is as usual, she smiled. I know you don't eat well when you're stressed. She was right. A chicken sandwich on whole grain bread, her potato salad with an egg, and a can of ice-cold Dr. Cherry soda. Brown. Thank you, Lucille, I said, immediately diving into my food. How are you holding up? I managed the sandwich and had to swallow it first. At first, I thought it was all a farce. I mean, where did you even find this doctor? The girls chose it themselves. They realized that they needed help and decided that whoever they usually saw would not be able to understand their situation. So they found a woman who they felt had a unique understanding of their problems. Yes, I said. I thought they loved their doctor, but they are adults. Whoever this new woman is, her therapy or whatever it is seems to be working. Have you noticed that the girls already look better? Yes, she agreed. At this rate, they'll be themselves again before you send them off to college. And then I can get the hell out of there. Is it really that bad to be in the same house as Catherine? I stuck my fork into the potato salad. This is very difficult for me, Lucille. I loved her for so long, so much, and those good memories are still there. I pointed to my chest. And then I see her, and all I can think about are those notes. I can only imagine what that felt like. My eyes fell on her neat little nose. It was Kat's nose. Lucille was always honest with me, sometimes so much so that I felt embarrassed by her revelations. I dream about her, I said. I dream that we are in bed having sex. With love. In these dreams, I don't know what happened. I just feel incredibly happy. And then I wake up and everything collapses. My love for her twists until it breaks and my mind fills with hatred. I feel betrayed, abandoned. And then I have to go down to breakfast and pretend to be polite for the sake of the twins. So yeah, it's hard. We sat in silence while I ate, and then I said, Lucille, I'm sorry. I have to ask. The girls accused Kat of having some kind of genetic flaw, something in her DNA that makes her more prone to. And you want to know if my husband cheated on me. She noticed that I was uncomfortable. And did I cheat on him? Yes. She shook her head. David, I love you like a son. I wish I had more insight into why people cheat, but I don't. Yes, Howard and I were hippies. Free love, the 60s, all these things, and a lot of it is true. But our marriage has always been just about the two of us. Look, David, people are people. We are stupid and make stupid decisions. All we can do is try not to hurt those we love. I would prune this tree instead of cutting it down. Okay, sounds reasonable. I'll send you an estimate tomorrow morning. Great, he paused. Have a beer with me. I need, please. David tightened his grip on the notebook. He nodded and followed Noah's father into the house. Mitch brought him a bottle and held it out until David bumped his against his. For love, Mitch said. Damn it, David thought. They were sitting in the living room. The house was quiet. I'll tell you a story, Mitch said. David started to get up. Look, I really can't discuss. Please stay, Mitch begged. I want to talk about myself. David paused, then leaned back. The beer was cold and good. One beer, he thought, then I'll wash off. Rose cheated on me. 2 years ago at work. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Mitch shrugged. I thought maybe Noah told Shelley, and Shelley said, You know they're having sex, right? David nodded. I would be surprised if they didn't do this. They are adults. She promises that they are always careful, and I see that Noah respects her. I'm fine with that. One of the women who works in the office called me, Mitch said, and told me that Rose was having an affair. She did this in empty houses that the agency showed to clients. The woman gave me a list of houses, and I drove around until I saw her car. I walked in, and they were there, on the carpet, doing this. I let them see me, then got out and drove home. My mind was red with rage. If I had a gun with me, they would be dead. Do you know what I mean? I understand, David answered cautiously. She came home eventually. She was crying. Her clothes were all wrinkled. It was a mistake, she said. She didn't love him. She only loves me and the children. I waited until she was done crying and asked her if she wanted a divorce. She burst into tears again. She only loved me. And so on. I had time while I was waiting for her to come home, Mitch continued, sitting here right here, by the way, to cool off and think. I didn't want to be married to someone I couldn't trust. I told her that what we had died. Then she completely lost control. I remember thinking that she was either sincere, in which case she was deluded, or she was the best actress I had ever seen. I told her that if she wanted to stay in this house and be a mother to her children, and this was important to her, make sure they never found out what she had done, then everything would change. David noticed that he had finished his beer. He put the bottle down, but made no move towards the exit. I didn't have the slightest idea what I was doing. It was a bluff. I waited until the next day, after kicking her out of our bedroom, to tell her my new rules. I thought that in the light of day she would probably put on her cheating face again and start denying and making excuses. In that case, we're done. But she was still heartbroken. She wanted to save her family. She wanted me back. I wanted to explain why. I told her to shut up. Why is it important? David leaned forward. But how did you cope with the fact that you saw your wife having sex with someone else? Exactly, said Mitch. It's a huge, fucking difficult mental barrier to overcome. I spent most of the night thinking, and this is what I proposed. I gave her a list of tasks. He said that if she did not do everything immediately, she would leave. If she objects to even one point, she leaves. She agreed, and I gave her the list. First, stop all contact with that man. Second, quit your job. Third, tell his wife all the details. Fourth, write a chronology of where, when, and how they met and what exactly they did. Fifth, give me access to all her online accounts. Wow, I know. I thought it was 50/50ths that she would read the list and say no, and that would actually make things easier for me. But she did everything without a single word of protest. I made her sleep in the guest room for 2 months. We went to a psychologist. Every evening we discussed everything. I watched her carefully for any signs of resistance and asked every day if she still agreed to our terms. After 2 months, I allowed her back into my bed, and he started his program. Mitch waved his thumb over his shoulder. You should have seen the story she wrote. In vivid detail, I almost threw up a couple of times while I was reading, but it helped me in my restoration project. I took her confession and sat down with her to discuss some points. David realized he needed another beer. The room suddenly became warm. The next time he meets Rose, it will be interesting. Mitch licked his lips and brought them another bottle. The moral of the story is this. The relationship had died the day I saw her on the carpet. I built a new relationship based on me controlling her body, using it for my own pleasure, and letting her know that I didn't care if she found pleasure again. This was rule number 6. Am I cruel and hateful? Asked Rose, and those toys that I collected. That's enough, David said hoarsely. Maybe some other time. We're like the Scooby-Doo team, but instead of solving ghost mysteries, we're solving sexual problems, said Tommy. We haven't decided anything yet, Shelley objected. Sorry, Grandma. Their grandmother stopped while cutting banana bread. The knife hovered over the brown loaf. For what, dear? For swearing. She sighed, put the knife down, and stood up. If we're going to talk frankly about human sexuality. She raised her hand to stop Tommy from opening his mouth. And yes, Tommy, I know that sounds like the name of a great band. I went to their concert at the Rat back in the day and danced in the mosh pit. She crossed the room, walked to the bookshelf, and returned with a large book. The cover said, Visions of Woodstock. The girls have already seen this. They never made the connection. She opened the book to a large color photo of a young girl with long blonde hair dancing in a circle of disheveled youth. Most of them looked at the girl with a smile, admiration, or surprise. The young girl was naked. She was slim and muscular. She was damn beautiful. And she seemed familiar. Then completely familiar. Damn it, Shelley exclaimed. Grandma, Erin gasped. This is... Exactly, dear. So don't be afraid to speak frankly with me. As you can see, I went through this. So many questions, Noah whispered, as if he didn't want to say it out loud. She looked at the boys, who were literally blushing with embarrassment. Since you've seen well, you can call me Lucille or Lucy. Your choice. And don't even think about taking a photo of it. I was young. You don't want this to end up on your phone. She returned the book to its place and went back to slicing the banana bread. So, Where are we? The youth were silent for a while, not knowing where to start. Finally, Tommy said, "Damn, I need a cigarette, and I don't even smoke." Everyone laughed and returned to the conversation. Noah spoke first. "I asked my father to talk to Mr. London about how to return." He glanced at Lucille, hesitated, but continued walking wife. Lucille beamed. "Well done. Did you overhear?" "Yes, I overheard." To be honest, some of the details made me cringe. He took out his phone and turned on the recording of the conversation. Aaron and Shelley looked at each other as Noah's father explained the details. "Can you imagine your mother?" "Yes." "Oh God." Tommy, with his mouth full, said something inaudible. I had to guess his words from the context. "It's simple. You just need to do a full reset and load the original data." "What kind of nonsense are you talking about?" Aaron asked. I said, "I understood what you said. Swallow it first and explain what you mean." "Full reset," Tommy said. "When the router's memory is fragmented or the firmware is damaged, you take a paperclip and insert it into the small hole in the back. This erases everything bad and returns the router to its original state." Aaron frowned. "It would be cool, but it's hardly possible," Tommy replied. "I think there is another way." Cat. The woman seemed to be Vietnamese, which made me wonder if she was qualified enough for this Brazilian procedure I had agreed to. Not that I have a choice. Aaron held my left hand and Shelley held my right. It looked like moral support, but I had no doubt that if I tried to refuse, they would have kept me on the table, and it would have happened anyway. The table was covered with paper. It reminded me of the tables in doctors' offices, which in turn reminded me, and I shut up again, doing as I was told. I was only wearing a t-shirt. Everything else was open. It seemed humiliating, then I remembered other times when I was just as naked, and I fell silent again. A woman did hair removal for me. All because of my idiotic actions. My hormones may have been out of control for a few weeks. Maybe the brain chemistry was completely out of whack. Perhaps I had a hidden infection or an undiagnosed brain tumor. Something caused my boundaries to loosen. Suddenly, I turned from a faithful wife into a woman of easy virtue for the sake of a mediocre man. I was suddenly horrified. What if I was never the faithful wife and mother I took myself to be? Maybe I've always been a cheating woman, just a good pretender. What if that part of me breaks out again and again, as soon as my body gives in? I squealed. I had to lie down again. "Breathe, Mom," Aaron ordered. "But it burns." Shelley leaned over me and smiled. "Of course it stings. We're still angry at you, and we want you to get hurt. But remember, many do this voluntarily." Lucy. "Lucy." "Yes. Are you going to pass me the cigarette or not?" Lucille looked at her lover. William was the principal of the high school where Aaron and Shelley once attended. It was there that she met him. She was often called to pick up the girls after school and eventually got to know all of their teachers. William seemed stern and cold to her. But one day, over cookies, Aaron said Mr. DeLayhunt asked if anyone other than Grandpa was picking them up. Lucille smiled to herself. "Tell him no, honey." It turned out that William is not cold at all. Or perhaps he was cold, but in a good way. Without a jacket and tie, he turned out to be an excellent dancer, a good conversationalist, and a great lover. As good as my late husband? She thought after their first night. Does it matter? No. We must live for today, treat friends and lovers with respect, and enjoy life. Sorry. Kat was window shopping at the small shopping center as they parked. Aaron was driving. Neither daughter told their mother where they were going. "Submarines?" Kat asked, reading the store sign at the back. She sat in the passenger seat, slightly nervous and not quite sure what was going on. Aaron nodded towards the store and Kat followed. "Tattoos? Are you going to get a tattoo?" "No, Mom, you're getting a tattoo." "But," Aaron made a shhh sound. "You don't have a butt." Shelley snorted. "Okay," Kat said obediently. "Do you also get tattoos?" Aaron looked at her coldly. "We are still too young for such a tattoo." They led her inside and sat her down in the reception area. It's kind of strange here, Kat whispered. The nicer the tattoo shop, the less glamorous it looks, Shelley replied calmly. You're here for the artist's skill, not for the atmosphere. An elderly woman appeared and introduced herself as Anne. She was covered with tattoos arms, neck, calves. Kat tried not to think about what other parts of her body might be decorated with ink. Erin handed Anne a piece of paper and she read it, then pointed to a poster with different types of fonts and styles. Erin and Shelley quickly consulted and chose a flowing font. Anne nodded and motioned for everyone to follow her. Take off your pants? Kat asked incredulously. Where exactly do you think this tattoo should go? We know exactly where she needs to go, Erin replied confidently. Don't worry, Mom. We came to Anne because she is the best at what she does. Anne nodded at Kat, who sighed and quickly looked away. Kat found herself on the table again, and it reminded her of unpleasant moments from the past. She was so distracted by her thoughts that she winced when Anne began preparing her skin for the tattoo. Sit still, Anne warned. There's no eraser here, if anything. Kat looked at her daughters, their faces full of delightful anticipation. Kat took a deep breath and decided to accept it. Anne turned on the machine and began working. The pain was palpable vibrations and sharp pricks, but Kat tried to concentrate and ignore the discomfort. Anne did her job long and carefully. When Anne finished and turned off the machine, Kat, breathing heavily, opened her eyes and looked at her. Anne shrugged and said with professional equanimity, "It happens." Kat looked at her daughters. They seemed pleased with the result, unaware of her inner turmoil. Look, said Anne, and held up the round mirror so that Kate could see the result. Kat saw the tattoo, and although she looked at it in the reflection, she recognized the meaning and details. She began to sob. Kat, the girls told me to wait for the swelling and redness around the tattoo to go down and let it happen naturally. I knew that the hot water in the upstairs bathroom faucet often didn't hold well, and until I could find the right size screwdriver, anyone who wanted to shower had to go to the guest bathroom. So I arranged everything so that it would be finished when David returned upstairs after breakfast. I opened the bathroom door and walked into the guest room, wet and completely naked. He entered the room, lost in thought, at first without noticing me, and then looked up. He saw me clutching a towel and apparently instantly understood why I was there. The next second, his eyes began to slowly move over my body. I had a terrible desire to cover myself. My husband, technically ex, has been seeing this body for 20 years, and suddenly I want to hide. I reproached myself. I remained standing straight, uncovered, as his gaze ran over my body. He licked his lips. I thought that now he would grab me and throw me on the bed. But then his gaze narrowed when he saw the tattoo. He froze for a few seconds and then made a strangled sound. He turned and ran out of the room, slamming the door so hard that the paintings on the wall shook. Shelley. Hey, Pa. Shelley fell silent, watching as her father stormed out of the house. She frowned and then went back to her granola. He was probably late for the evaluation of some order. But that became unlikely when she saw her mother running down the stairs. Naked. Where is he? Kat screamed. She headed for the door, but Shelley blocked her way. What the hell? He saw me. Shelley looked out the kitchen window and saw her father's truck speeding into the distance. Are you sure he saw you? Yes, in this form. The mother threw away the towel and stood naked in front of her. Did he see the tattoo? Certainly. When he saw her, he got angry and ran away. Shelley looked at her incredulously. What the hell is this? Erin. You have to be kidding, Erin said. What? Lucille asked, turning off the stove and covering the frying pan with a lid. Dad saw the tattoo and got mad. He ran out of the house and disappeared in his truck. Shelley says he's not answering calls and the tracker app doesn't show his location. Turn on the speakerphone, dear. Mom was there, completely naked, and Dad carefully examined everything, including the tattoo. He seemed to like what he saw until he noticed the tattoo. Then he snapped. When he passed me, running out of the house, he looked very angry. Evil. This doesn't make sense. I know. We have to find him, said Lucille. Call the guys. They split up, each checking out places they thought their father might have gone to. He wasn't at the local sports bar, wasn't on the river bank, wasn't at the baseball field. Lucille had to check the workshop, but he wasn't there either. None of the team saw him. She was about to leave when it dawned on her. She returned to the office and asked, "Where is truck number 1 now?" She found David in the first truck, parked 2 blocks from the workshop on a quiet side street. She walked over and slowly climbed into the passenger seat. "How did you find me?" asked David. Lucille pointed to the GPS tracker on the windshield, and David grinned without a trace of amusement. "It's over, Lucille. All. What's happened?" I saw her. Nude. She was using my shower, and I saw her. All. He turned away, and on her damn body was his name. He made a vague movement towards his groin. Crap, thought Lucille. Male pride. He really needs glasses. But if we tell the truth now, the effect will not be what they expected. I can't stand it anymore, he continued. I will never enter this house again. And what about the twins? They can handle it. They can't expect me to tolerate such disrespect. Did they really know about the tattoo? Lucille shook her head, but not because the girls didn't know they knew. She shook her head as the plan began to fall apart at the seams. What are you going to do now? He started the truck. The car rumbled and rocked. Old, but reliable, with a powerful engine. Look there. He nodded towards the horizon. The front is approaching quickly. There will be rain and wind. We will be busy with emergency work all week. I need to go back to the workshop and get ready. She said goodbye to him and climbed down from the cabin. As soon as he left, she pulled out her phone. I found him, she said. In response, she heard sighs of relief. She was put on speakerphone. He is very upset. He goes back to the workshop. Let's meet at the house and think things over. She ran into the house just as the first rain began to fall. Aaron and Shelley walked around the kitchen. Tommy was rummaging through the refrigerator. Noah was stretched out in the living room playing a video game. Lucille looked around. Where is your mother? I thought she was upstairs, Aaron said. Oh, damn, 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 Shelley exclaimed. Her car is gone. Tommy looked up. Do you think she went to get something to eat? David. I sat at my desk upstairs, watching the weather radar on my computer and trying to escape the real world by focusing on my little corner. Suddenly, I heard screams and fast footsteps approaching the stairs. I turned around in my chair. Kat burst into my office. She looked confused and worried. She stopped in front of me, pointing decisively at her tattoo, as if she wanted to prove something. My head was full of conflicting thoughts, and I didn't want to look at what she wanted to show me, especially knowing her promises. Then a small part of my mind suddenly said, wait, the last time you saw her, everything was different. But before I could fully process the thought, Kat screamed at me. Look, David, look carefully. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't going to look at what she was trying to show. I wanted to avoid this for the rest of my life. But before I could shout back, she started talking again. What is written here? What is written here? It was too much. I vowed to never speak to her again, but I just couldn't stay silent at that moment. I was angry at her behavior. Why did she torment me so much? She knew what it said, and she knew how much I hated it. But before I could say anything, I still looked. And to my surprise, I realized that I was wrong. Instead of what I expected, her tattoo had my name on it. I saw the ornate letter D, and the meaning of the rest of the words slowly dawned on me. Kat calmed down and looked at me with sadness in her eyes. That's right, she said, now quietly. This is yours. It was always yours. It will always be yours. But now I guess I'll have to find another person with the same name as you. With these words, she turned around and ran out of the room, faster than she had entered. Aaron and Shelley were upstairs at the door to the master bathroom when their grandmother found them. They both made rustling noises and quietly gestured with their hands. She slowly walked towards the door. She could hear David inside. He muttered something, then spoke loudly and incoherently, then muttered again. He came home about 10 minutes ago, Shelley whispered, ran into his bedroom, Mom's bedroom, locked the door, and started going crazy. He talked to himself, cursed at imaginary people. He punched the wall a couple of times. Well, it's just. They heard the back door open, letting in the rain, and the pitter-patter of bare feet on the tiles. The three of them ran down the stairs and found Kat pacing back and forth. She was wet and still naked. Tommy and Noah shamelessly stared at their friend's attractive naked mother, but pointedly looked away when they realized they had been caught. I ruined everything, Kat said sadly. I screamed at him. He left. Actually, Aaron said, he's upstairs and he's acting crazy. Kat jumped and headed for the stairs, but the twins blocked her. Grandma, Shelley said, could you take the guys to the basement and turn on the Disney Channel? The boys, still turned away, began to protest, but followed Lucille to the basement door without attempting to take another look. Shelley's voice was so powerful. They heard a muffled scream from above, and Kat stepped forward. Aaron held her back. Mom, we know that you want to get back into our father's heart. We told you we wouldn't let this happen. Kat seemed to deflate and covered her face with both hands. But if you follow some simple rules, we'll reconsider. Kat folded her hands in front of her. Anything. They laid out their rules. Kat gasped. But I don't. Aaron looked at her sister. Shelley, if you have a daughter, will you name her after your mother? No, Aaron, I don't have a mother. Okay, Kat agreed. Shelley shook her head. When this is all over, we're going to need a lot of therapy. But I never, Kat objected. That's the point, isn't it? Understanding crossed Kat's face, followed by a sort of determination. They listened as Kat ran up the stairs. They heard a metallic scrape, then the sound of door hinges, then the wooden sound of a door being carefully closed, then silence. David. I just couldn't stay still. My chest was compressed from such a furious mixture of feelings that it seemed that a little more and I would explode. Thoughts swirled through my head like a swarm of angry wasps, buzzing and stinging without mercy. Hatred and love fought, collided like two furious predators, each of which tore me apart. A woman of easy virtue whom I loved with all my heart. With these words, something inside me froze with bitterness. My beloved, my only dear, cheater. How did it fit together? How could these two images exist in one person? I paced around the bedroom like a caged animal, arguing with myself, whispering curses and incoherent phrases. I needed to get rid of her. Yes, get rid of her. This thought arose again and again, like a beacon of salvation in a sea of pain. I could no longer lie as if my skin had been torn off, exposing all my nerves. I never wanted to see her again. Lightning flashed outside the window, illuminating the room with a sharp, white light, and almost immediately followed by thunder. Its roar seemed to echo right above the house, causing the glass in the windows to tremble slightly. I froze, tense as a taut string. And suddenly a sound. Metal sliding against the door lock. The heart skipped a beat before beating faster. I froze, looking at the door, as if waiting for a ghost to appear. It opened slowly, with a barely audible creak. Here she is. She stood on the threshold, and for the first few moments we looked at each other like strangers. She was wearing simple clothes, but every detail seemed to me saturated with lies and betrayal. She was holding something in each hand. I didn't immediately understand what exactly because I couldn't take my eyes off her face. Her eyes, usually so lively, were now dull and haunted, like those of a person awaiting sentencing. There was a look of horror on her face, as if she was afraid to even breathe in my presence. I saw how her lips trembled a little, how she tried to say something, but instead she simply lowered her gaze. Then, with an almost imperceptible movement, she walked around me, avoiding my gaze, and headed towards the bed. Every step she took was tense, as if she was carrying an invisible weight on her shoulders. I stood motionless, watching as she carefully lowered what she had brought onto the bed. Whatever it was, it seemed to me to be part of her attempt to correct the situation, although at that second I wanted only one thing to understand: where the woman I loved had disappeared and why this unfamiliar image had taken her place. Cat. It took all my courage to take this step. As if overcoming an invisible wall, I slowly reached out my hand to the doorknob. She was cold as ice, or maybe it was my fingers that were numb from tension. I took a deep breath, feeling a shiver run through my entire body, and carefully turned the knob. The door creaked quietly, as if resisting my intrusion. When I entered the bedroom, I felt as if I had stepped into another world. The air here was heavy, saturated with silence and the dull echo of our recent quarrel. David sat on the edge of the bed, hunched over, as if trying to hide from the pain that seemed almost tangible. His hands were folded in front of him, his head bowed. I felt something hard and impassable squeezing my throat, but I forced myself to move on. Every step was like overcoming an invisible barrier. I felt like I was invading his personal space, his vulnerability, and this made me feel humiliated and shameful. It was as if his words of disappointment, his bitter glances, were imprinted on my skin. But at that very second, I realized that this is exactly how he must have felt. My dear David, he saw everything that I tried so hard to hide. He saw a betrayal that hit him right in the heart. And that name, oh God, even the thought of him made me shrink in disgust. Dawn, it sounded like a poisonous hiss in my head, each syllable painfully scratching my thoughts. I wanted to erase it, throw it away like unnecessary dirt, never to remember it again. But I didn't come here to hide behind my own fear. I came to finish what I started. Even if David stood up now, grabbed my arm, and pushed me out of the room, I had to do it. I had to try. I owed him this. His pain was my pain, and I couldn't just walk away, leaving him alone with this burden. I walked closer, feeling my steps seem to echo in the tense silence. He raised his head, his eyes meeting mine. There was such a mixture of anger, resentment, and fatigue in them that I froze for a moment. But then, through force, I found the remnants of courage in myself. We did it. Somehow, through those bitter words, tears, and heavy silence, we were able to find our way back to each other. This moment was neither perfect nor easy, but it was real. We stepped towards the truth, towards each other. And in this, through the pain and cracks, there was something that could be called the beginning of healing. Cat, we must have fallen asleep. I opened my eyes and realized that the storm had passed. The sky was getting lighter, the dark storm clouds were moving away. David lay there, asleep. He was so tired and tense. It was strange and unusual, but I thought, overall, not so bad. His arms hugged me tightly. He held me like something precious. I stretched out my arms and hugged him even tighter. Noah stood at the kitchen door with his hands in his pockets, more nervous than she'd ever seen him. "When did classes end at Stanford?" Shelley asked. "Oh, my last exam was a week ago. I had to vacate the hostel and leave my things for storage. Then I flew home." "What are your plans for the summer?" "An internship," he answered without much enthusiasm. "And you?" She opened the refrigerator and took out 2 cans of cola. "Working for Dad again." She held out 1 can, and Noah slowly walked over to accept it. "Real work this time?" "Yes." Noah opened the jar. "How is he?" He took a sip, then changed his mind. "How are they?" Shelley tilted her head towards the window. Noah followed his gaze and noticed a small brass key on a cotton rope hanging on a nail in the wall. He walked over to touch it and then turned around with a questioning look. "This is the key to the safety deposit box," Shelley said. "Inside the box is a divorce decree, their wedding rings, her engagement ring, and—" She paused and looked out the window. Her cheeks turned red. Noah waited. He moved closer to stand next to her. 15 cards. Each one says, "1 free passage." Mom signed each of them. "Well, how are they?" he asked. Shelley smiled. "They drive us crazy with their loud sex. Every damn night. My hostel is just a monastery compared to this house." "Noah." He looked at the key for a long time. "Do you think he'll ever use one of these?" "Don't know. I doubt it, but the fact that Mom knows they exist and are just one turn of the key away. A key she has to see every day should keep her on her toes. Noah turned to her. It works both ways, you know. You look at it from a woman's point of view, but look at it from the male's side. There are times when memories will come flooding back to your father. It could be in the doctor's office, or hearing that guy's name, or just looking at your mother lying on her back, waiting. Shelley frowned, but did not interrupt him. She already knew that Noah could sometimes surprise her with his insight. Black thoughts will come. For years, perhaps forever. They will be as fresh as the first time. It will be like a blow. Rotate the knife. Hopefully, these moments will become fewer over time, but when they come, he will be able to present these cards. Just one little key, and he could even score. This knowledge will calm his ego enough that he can move on. It helps, he continued, that now they are two free people who choose to be together, rather than two married people who feel they have to be together. Shelley put her arm around Noah's shoulders. Noah, Shelley said, are you dating anyone this summer? He looked at her, first in surprise, then warily. And you? She briefly wondered if she should lie about having several boyfriends, all handsome, but her eyes fell on the key and she remembered the cost of lying. No. She hugged him with her other hand. He grabbed her roughly, kissing her so hard she felt dizzy with happiness. Lucille. I opened one eye and looked at the phone. 10:12 a.m., bright June morning. I was lying on my side, next to William. It was the summer holidays, and school principals could afford to come to their lover's house for breakfast and leisurely sex. I ran into Kat at the grocery store yesterday, he whispered. I think she knows about us. Of course she knows about us. I tell her everything. All? He asked. I heard a smirk in his voice and laughed. She seemed happy, he said. I sighed. Hope. She and David are looking for new ways to be a couple. It can't be easy. Are there many ghosts? I nodded. A lot. Lucille, he said. Yes, William. Will you marry me? Damn this man. I started crying. He had never seen me cry before. He tried to turn me over so he could see my face, but I resisted. No. He pulled away, his gaze clouded with a mixture of misunderstanding and resentment. No, won't you marry me? There was bewilderment in his voice, almost a whisper, as if he was afraid to hear the answer. I sobbed, covering my face with my hands, as if that could hide my pain. No, I said, choking on tears that seemed to become heavier than all my words. No, don't look at me. I sobbed again, desperately wiping my eyes with my palms, but the tears flowed in an endless stream. My chest felt tight, my voice trembled. Yes, I exhaled, as if breaking an invisible barrier within myself. Yes, I will marry you. His eyes widened, and a moment later he rushed towards me, hugging me so tightly that I felt his heart beating. We stood in this embrace, and the world around us seemed to stop. I buried my face in his shoulder, and my tears continued to flow, leaving wet marks on his shirt. But I cried not only from joy or relief. I cried for my late husband, whose face still clearly appeared before me at the most unexpected moments, his smile, his eyes, his voice that no longer sounded in my house. From the feeling that with his departure, a part of me disappeared forever. I cried for the naive young girl. I once was the girl who danced naked with ease, trusting the world around her, in that sunny meadow where the air smelled of grass and freedom. Her dreams seemed endless, and her life was simple and bright. I cried for my wonderful, wise grandchildren, for their happy faces, for how they taught me to see light in the world, even when I myself was plunged into darkness. And I also cried for everyone who has ever found love, lost it, and then, miraculously, found it again. I cried for those invisible threads that connect us to each other, for the joys and losses that make us who we are. His hands squeezed me tighter, as if he wanted to share this burden, to relieve at least part of my pain. And in his warmth, in his tenderness, I realized, love can truly find us again, even in the most unexpected places, even after long darkness. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.